In the Gun, episode 28. It's time for the K-State recap as we approach the holiday season here. We've got a special sale to tell you about in just a minute. But first, I'm Wes Uhler with the best teammates in the business. We got the runaway beer truck, Owen Schmitt, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning. This episode of ITG is brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Basketball is back, and Bet Online remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup information, player news, and game trends at Bet Online. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, Bet Online features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, MMA, college sports, tennis, boxing, the World Cup's going on, and you can even bet on golf as well. So head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE when you sign up to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV, Bet Online, where the game starts. Gentlemen, some headlines to get to here. As I mentioned, Jed, we got a special Black Friday sale planned for our loyal listeners of ITG.
Yeah, our friends over at High Street Prints. We've been collaborating with them, and we are in position. We want to get Owen in the Black Friday sales business. Everybody likes to have these sales the day after Thanksgiving when everybody's full of tryptophan and dumb and spending money. So we're going to do the same thing. What we're going to do at itgfootball.com, if you place your order after midnight on Thursday, anytime during that 24-hour period of Black Friday, we're going to have a buy one, get one free offer for the products on the website. And as you go to itgfootball.com, you'll shop around and see there's a wide variety of stuff available on there, from the ITG hats you've seen us wear to the t-shirts. There's trucker hats available. There's pullovers. There's things you haven't seen us wear. So itgfootball.com. It will be a Black Friday only sale, buy one, get one free. And if you want to get the jump on the holiday season for the Mountaineer fans in your life, or the podcast fans in your life, or the runaway beer truck fans in your life, or the Schmitt Happens fans in your life, whoever it might be, or if you're a fan of Wes's hair, whatever it might be, itgfootball.com. Buy one, get one free on Black Friday. We thought that was a pretty cool idea. We've never done a promotion on there, and we thought, why not? The season's winding down. It's a good time to do that day before the last game. So,
you know what we're going to do? We're going to sell replica wigs of my hair, and it'll just be, you could sit down in a chair, like, and they'll lower the hair down onto your head like Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back.
Only if
I like that
the replica wig of your hair has the replica.
That's how I put my hair on. This isn't
an Arduzzi hat has to go on top of it. It has to, right?
This isn't real hair. I just sit down and it's like a machine, like Darth Vader.
I mean, we've had a lot of go backs and regulars and things that the podcast has become known for. Yes. But the first of all of them, Owen, was the Narduzzi hat, right? I mean, the Narduzzi hat was the first one.
That one made some waves. That one made some headlines.
Well, that is an excellent story.
Well, you know what? I might have some some things planned for old Patrick at this round of OTAs, another 6 months or so for the Steelers, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Gentlemen, we also here in our headlines portion to open up this episode, got to give a shout out to a man who coached both of you, molded you into the men that you became today. Of course, former WVU head coach Rich Rodriguez, conference champion at Jacksonville State. They won the A-Sun, clinched that on Saturday. So big shout out to your former coach.
Oh, we got a lot of friends on his staff, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, that he knows how to bring the hard edge to any team he coaches, and he's obviously done it down there in Jacksonville.
I mean, from Rick Trickett to Rod, I'm going to forget somebody, to on the line to Dusty. Okay, Dusty always has a role. He finds a role for Dusty. But we got a lot of friends on that staff. So that 9-2 finish in conference championship, of course, we were happy for those folks that we've known for so long. And speaking of guys that we know, and speaking of Trickett's, I'll tell you what, if you want you a nice play caller, or a quarterback coach, or an OC who is soon to be looking for work, Travis Trickett, again, this Friday night, I don't know if you guys watched the game. I was in the hotel in Morgantown and watched it Friday night. Travis and those guys in South Florida was playing at Tulsa with his fourth string quarterback. his offense put up 500 yards and 42 points, and they still lost. I mean, that South Florida defense is like last in the country.
Yeah.
So, and he's with his fourth string quarterback, so somebody's going to give old Trav another shot too. But speaking of headlines, Deion's name and South Florida. Deion's name was attached to both South Florida and Colorado. I
saw that.
But anyway,
that was surprising. That was surprising to me. Yeah. I thought if he was going to leave Jackson State, that it would be maybe for Florida State at some point, his alma mater, for Auburn. Not to, like, I don't want to make it seem like, I mean, Colorado's a Power 5 program, South Florida is, but I thought that he would kind of hold out until it was a blue blood, right? An Auburn, a Florida State, something like that. But it'll be interesting.
Here's the thing with South Florida, though. Okay, that's a program, in my opinion, that with the right coach, because all those players are down there, and I understand the Florida State deal. I'm sure he would love to, but that's his thing, right? That would be his thing that he would build. It wouldn't be something, you know what I mean? And I think he's kind of into that a little bit. Not so much tooting his horn. I mean, he's a great ambassador for the kids. Really is completely straight up with them. Lets them know how it is, coaches them hard in his own way, and does a great thing. I'd say he probably knows that day is going to come. But yeah, no, I was kind of with you too a little bit, Wes. I'm like, he's going to go for something bigger than just the run of the mill. But South Florida is an area where he has.
That's true.
I mean, all the recruits.
He's got the recruits, the connections. Yeah.
Owen kind of knows him by proxy through Noel, right? But I mean, Noel's relationship was pivotal, was central to the development of Noel as a high school kid, right? But yeah, here's where you're right, Owen. I mean, for all we know, conversations behind closed doors might involve Deion saying, "Listen, South Florida, I'll take you seriously if you take me seriously. You know that off-campus or that on-campus facility that UCF invested in? Let's talk." Okay. Yeah. Because without those sorts of investments and that sort of commitment, who knows? I mean, maybe that's the kind of guy that can get those types of things done and take a place like that to the next level. Because just like Owen said, that's fertile recruiting ground right there. I mean, you can almost, as my buddy Mike Best always likes to say about these Florida and Texas schools, put a tryouts on Monday sign out in front of campus and win 6 games,
Yeah.
But there's a lot
of your recruiting grounds, Florida. I mean, you can go other places, but literally it's probably a 60-mile radius, and that's all you have to recruit. I mean, and no crap. I mean,
Pinellas County, there's great football, obviously.
You know what I mean? So I could see that completely being a thing, because he could build his entire program there, right? That would be built by Deion for sure.
Anything Deion does is
built by Prime. Coach Prime.
Anything Coach
Don't want to disrespect the man.
It's all going to be about, okay, what sort of staff are you looking to assemble? Because we realize you're the face of it, okay?
Yeah.
You're the figurehead. But the truth of the matter is, let's get down to brass tacks here. We know you need a legitimate coordinator on both sides of the football. You need a legitimate associate head coach. So how you put your staff together, here's an idea. Coach Prime takes the South Florida job and keeps Travis Trickett. How about that? He's right there already in the building.
There you go.
Why not?
That'll be interesting. It certainly will. He's going to be a hot name in coaching searches. If he doesn't end up leaving this cycle next year, as long as he's still there at Jackson State. So it'll be interesting to follow.
Because I mean, that's 11-0. That's first time in their school history. So I mean, that's another big dinger on his wall hanger. So I mean, the sky's really the limit for him. Honestly, he's making a lot of noise right now in college football.
He sure is, and in most of the right ways too.
Yeah. Let's see if they can go win a national championship here to kind of put the cherry on top of all that. Speaking of familiar names, everybody knows Prime. Of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you know Rich Rodriguez. You also know the name Shane Lyons here to wrap up our headlines. Shane Lyons, didn't take him long to find his next gig. He was not unemployed. He was not a free agent for very long, I should say. Shane Lyons returning to Alabama, where he was before WVU as Executive Deputy Director of Athletics and Chief Operating Officer, COO. So Shane back down there in Tuscaloosa with Alabama, like I said, where he was before he came to Morgantown. And obviously we wish him all the best here as he moves forward. And we will obviously still awaiting the announcement of the next WVU athletic director, something that we'll discuss here in thorough detail on the podcast when the time is right. Finally, I think it's going to be soon as well too. I don't think we'll have to wait much longer. Finally, gentlemen, as always, let's take a look at the top 25. We got a graphic for you. We'll pull that up right now.
Graphic free on this, Wes.
We're not no. Are we going graphic free? All right,
we're going graphic free. The only thing I wanted to do was ask you guys, because here what we're gonna discuss is the Associated Press poll and the coaches poll. They came out on Sunday, but this time of year the real poll, it's all about the CFP, right? The CFP rankings. So a couple quick points to make about the Associated Press poll. Tennessee, who got throttled by South Carolina, okay, throttled. I mean, they say if you step into Williams-Brice Stadium and you get behind the 8 ball, you're not getting back out in front. I mean, and that's exactly what you saw play out there. Well, they dropped 4 spots in the AP. I thought it'd be more than that. They only dropped to 9th in the Associated Press. Meanwhile, out west, you had some interesting goings on with USC and UCLA. UCLA only dropped a spot because that was such a tussle, that 48-45 game between the Bruins and the Trojans. What I want to ask you guys, what's your opinion? And I'll give you 2 questions. Question number 1, when the playoff poll comes out Tuesday night, okay, who is going to be ranked higher? Tennessee, who was number 5 in last week's playoff poll, but as we said, got blown out by South Carolina, or Alabama, who lost to Tennessee on that last second field goal and was number 8 last week. Again, Tennessee plummeted to 9 in the AP. What do you guys think? Or how's the committee going to handle that one? Tennessee head-to-head versus Bama won. Tennessee has 2 losses, so does Bama. But Tennessee paid for it in the other poll. So what do you think? Who's higher, Tennessee or Bama? Does Tennessee stay ahead of Bama?
There you go.
Man, that's tough.
It is tough.
I think sometimes with the polls, and maybe this isn't true, but this is just kind of my belief. Sometimes I feel like the past plays a part in what happens in these polls. Obviously, that theory doesn't really work in the other poll. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a thought on it yet. You know what I mean? It's tough. I don't really even have my head wrapped around it, honestly.
What's your guess?
Well, I got you, Owen. It's going to be Alabama. Take it to the bank, bet the mortgage, take out a second mortgage, bet that on it as well, too, because of 2 words. Hendon Hooker. Yeah. I don't think we're going to see the committee give Tennessee much love because, 1, they just got blown out, and the committee does not like blowout losses. They'll take a 3-point loss, 4-point loss, 7-point loss, something like that in a close game and not crush you for it. But you get blown out and you lose your Heisman candidate quarterback in the process to a season-ending injury.
Bring something interesting up, Wes.
Hendon Hooker is not there anymore, and Tennessee is not going to get the love because of that.
When I say hugs in Cincinnati with this conversation, what do you think?
Kenyon Martin.
There you go. So the age-old question is, do you rank the team based on their performance and their resume up to that point, or do you rank them going forward? It's going to be a lot different because that trigger man's gone. So that's what's interesting. But I'll tell you this. I remember that first committee in 2014. Oliver was on that committee.
Yep.
And we were on a flight probably to somewhere in Oklahoma or Texas for one of our road games. And I was sitting near Oliver and we were talking about this. And he said, all right, Jed, he said, hey, I got a question for you. And he handed me a notebook and he said, give me your top 25. I said, oh, okay, sounds like a fun little exercise. So I jotted my top 25 down. All right. And he said, that's great. He said, now let's go through them. And he was like to number 2. If you remember, the Mississippi schools were 1 and 2 in that initial poll, right? Back in 2014. And the granular degree to which he took this conversation, okay, I was very impressed by it with each team. Now, it says, think about it, Owen. He was saying things I hadn't even thought of for these teams. And I was like, wow, that is a tremendous point. And he's like, these are the conversations we have in that room. He said, you're trying to solve the impossible is what you're trying to do. And you can't do it. You can just put your best effort toward doing so. But every time I see these things unfold or see these rankings come out, that's what I think of, is that conversation that I had with Oliver on that team charter to Texas years ago in 2014, thinking, well, I had some insight as to the types of things that this committee's talking about when they compare and contrast the good and the bad. Here's question number 2. Okay.
Oh, there's a bonus question.
Jed, before you answer that question, you say that, and then I think, why did you ever leave as the NCAA commissioner?
Oh, I know why. Because he was staying ahead of the posse.
Yeah, that's why. I'm just trying to think, but then he goes to the XFL. I'm like,
and he was trying to stay ahead of that posse. All right. Yeah. He's good at staying ahead of posses. There you go.
All right,
you know a thing or two about posses. All right. You're a Yellowstone guy, right? Okay. So
who isn't?
Question number 2. Who, Tuesday night, when the rankings come out, who is going to be ranked higher? LSU, who last week sat at number 6. Of course, people were infatuated by the last second win over Alabama, even though the next week they had a bit of a hangover and an ugly win over Arkansas. This past week, they took care of business after a slow start against UAB. Or, speaking of infatuation, there's a newfound infatuation with USC, maybe even to the Heisman level. A lot of people want to hand Caleb Williams the Heisman now again. He kind of fell out of favor for a while, but I'm telling you, a lot of people were watching that shootout where USC held on and knocked off UCLA 48-45. People look at that as a quality win. So a week ago, LSU was number 6 and USC was number 7. They beat number 16 UCLA, who barely fell in the Associated Press poll. So is 2-loss LSU going to stay ahead of 1-loss USC? That's my question to you. What do you think there?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
USC jumps in front of them. Right?
Yeah, you know why? Yeah. Because they are the only team outside of the SEC and the Big Ten. The only teams that could jump an SEC team are like Clemson, Notre Dame, and USC.
Clemson is going to take a lot.
No, I don't mean in this. I'm talking.
I got you. Just
I'm talking like globally. the only programs that the committee respects, like they're an SEC or a Big Ten team, is Clemson, Notre Dame, and USC.
So here's my final question to you, and we'll close this out and go to break. This has been a fun conversation. Okay, let's take the same 2 teams. Let's take LSU and USC. Let's assume again LSU has 2 losses and was boat raced by Tennessee at home. That's an ugly loss, right? And they lost Florida State early in the year. So USC has one loss and very tight by a whisker on the road at a good Utah team.
Okay? Yep.
Now, take LSU and USC. My final question to you. If both of them went out, which of course would mean LSU would have a win against number 1 ranked Georgia. We're assuming Georgia's unbeaten going to the SEC title game, right? And that would mean USC beats a ranked, believe it or not, Notre Dame has come back from that Marshall loss and looked pretty good over the course of the last 4 to 6 weeks. Yep. They're getting some love too. So that means USC would have a win over Notre Dame and a win in the Pac-12 championship with 1 loss. They'd be sitting there at 12-1. So would a 12-1 USC team be ranked higher than a 2-loss LSU SEC champion team? And remember, the committee has a history of not liking 2-loss teams. Ohio State, Penn State, case in point.
Yeah. I don't know who would be ranked higher, but I would wager that both would make it into the playoff. Those 2, Georgia and TCU, as long as TCU wins. The SEC champion is not going to be left out of the playoff.
What if you have an unbeaten Big Ten champ?
Ooh, then TCU might get screwed.
No, I think LSU gets screwed. If you have really a 2-loss SEC champ,
but they're the SEC. You know how they feel about that conference. They're the SEC champion.
How they feel about it, but I'm telling you, if you have an unbeaten Big Ten champ,
you're absolutely right. You're 100. I was totally I had a brain fart and forgot the Big Ten.
But I tell you,
you're absolutely right on that.
Is there any possibility they screw TCU? Because we've already seen these narratives that are 100%. Inaccurate as the live long day. But
100% that could easily happen.
What's that?
You know what?
Easily happen.
Yeah, and you know what,
I
Jed?
feel
They
like
say
the Big 12
history.
isn't getting a lot of love as far as, I
No.
mean, yes, TCU is doing their thing, but I still think there's a lot of criticism on TCU just because of some of the games here late. And
you know what I like about TCU?
Michigan's this week, right?
Michigan,
Yes.
Ohio State this week. Yep.
Saturday at noon. Yep.
What I like about TCU is they won all kind of different types of games.
Yeah.
They've won defensive ugly tussles. They've won shootouts. They've won comebacks. They've got a lead and held it. They've won every type of game. I mean, they're a graced team this year.
Oh, absolutely.
If they can just hold on to win more and more against Iowa State and go to Jerry World, that test in Jerry World is not going to be easy. I'll tell you that, because that's the other thing. That's the old data point that we lacked in 2014 when TCU stayed home. Now you have that Big 12 championship game against a quality opponent, because we both know for a fact, okay? First of all, I don't think a 2-loss SEC champ goes in over an unbeaten TCU. I don't think so at all. Now, if it's a 1-loss SEC champ, no doubt in my mind. But I don't think a 2-loss goes over an unbeaten. But the difference to me is this. If it was Texas or Oklahoma with TCU's resume, the sad thing is wouldn't even have the conversation.
That's what I'm saying. That's where I'm saying, like, the past, I feel like the past kind of nudges that conversation in a different direction.
History repeats itself, and my goodness, wouldn't it be something if TCU was the team to get screwed twice?
If they're unbeaten, they're going. I'm telling
TCU?
you. If they're unbeaten, they're going.
But what if your scenario plays out? Either Ohio State or Michigan's unbeaten.
Yes, one will be. I'm thinking one will be.
USC wins out the rest of the way.
1 loss. Yep.
Georgia's only loss is to LSU in the SEC championship game.
LSU stays home.
Or does USC stay home?
No, I think Georgia does. Or I mean LSU.
What if LSU beats Georgia by 14 in the SEC championship game? What if it's a decisive victory?
Well, we'd have to look at it, because the only thing we know for certain.
I'm going down a lot of wormholes here.
Well, which is what this is all about this time of year. The only thing we know for certain from the history of from 2014 moving forward about this committee, they don't care a whole lot about conference champs. They don't even care about divisional champs, but they do care if you have 2 losses.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And big win for Big 12. TCU does go to the show and win.
Heck yeah.
What's that?
I said that's a lot of love for the Big 12 if TCU does remain who they are and go stomp a mud hole in the national championship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what, Jed? I made that joke about history repeating itself, and could TCU get screwed twice? You know, the only 2-loss national champion in the history of college football.
Yeah, don't remind me.
Louisiana State University.
Yes. And what year was it? Oh, okay.
All right. Stop. No, we're not talking. Listen, I wasn't going there. Okay. Gosh,
George Lucas always said,
push it too far there.
Said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Well, what rhymes with?
Yeah, there you go.
2007, almost heaven. We got to get to break here. We got to get to break. Yeah, let us know on our Twitter account at In the Gun Podcast, in the YouTube comments, what you think, how this scenario, the college football playoff, is going to play out. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on that down the stretch here. When we come back, we make some projections and some predictions every single week here on the podcast. We'll revisit those and see how we did. You're listening to ITG.
I'm talking with J.R. Toothman of Toothman Ford. J.R., everybody knows a lot of pro athletes buy from you. What's the secret?
Just like Will Greer, future Hall of Famer Frank Gore, James Washington, and many more pros, these guys have financial advisors that are always looking out for them to save time and money, and that's why they always shop at Toothman Ford.
And what if you're like us regular folks that don't have people giving us advice?
You don't need a financial advisor. Toothman Ford will save you time and money no matter who you are. Plus, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy from us. Visit toothmanford.com and get a quick, instant cash offer.
That sounds like a score to me.
That's right. And as always, we'll take anything in trade from chicken wings to Super Bowl rings.
Toothman Ford's got a lot of fans. Here's another one, Dallas Cowboys QB Will Greer.
This is Will Greer, former West Virginia and current NFL quarterback. And cars really do cost less in Grafton at Toothman Ford.
That's a fact, Will. Thanks. You can shop online anytime at toothmanford.com.
Let's go, Mountaineer fans. You're tuned in to In the Gun with Wes, the Runaway Beer Truck, and the Signal Caller.
Back in the gun here. Time to take a look back at the week that was across the country and in the Big 12 Conference. We referenced some of these top 25 games when we were talking about earlier on. We were talking about the college football playoff rankings coming out. We discussed some of these, but let's take a look here at our projections from last week and how these games actually played out. Jed, we'll start in the top 25 here and pull up the graphic now. What do we got?
Oh, in the CFP playoff rankings, it was the West Coast's world, and we were just living in it. You had a couple games battled out that way. We had Utah at Oregon. We projected a 31-28 Oregon win over Utah by a field goal, and guess what happened? They won by a field goal. Our projection was on point. It was lower scoring. It was 20-17. Oregon held on for the win at home. And then the big game out west, again, expected a shootout and expected USC. We projected him to win by a field goal 38-35. That was our projection last week. 38-35. Guys, the actual score was 48-45. So in both these games, the projection was pretty close. So sometimes it's funny how those numbers work, but those were the two big battles between ranked teams.
Jed was his computer that he's created that crunches all these numbers for us and comes up with the projections every week. It did pretty well this past week, I tell you. At least across the top 25. Let's take a look and see how we did in the conference. The Big 12 games here. Jed, we'll pull that graphic up now. How did we do?
Okay, TCU Baylor. We projected a 30-27 TCU win on the road in Waco. 30-27. The actual score was 29-28. Again, pretty close. TCU over Baylor 29-28. Our projection was 30-27. Texas on the road at Kansas. We wondered last week why Texas was a 9-point favorite in Lawrence. Well, we found out why. Kansas reverted to form in a 55-14 Texas win in Lawrence. Probably looking ahead to the Mayflower battle with K-State coming up this week, right? Texas Tech and Iowa State, we predicted a 26-23 Iowa State win over Texas Tech and Ames. Actually, the Red Raiders went into Ames and won 14-10. And then finally, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, a little bedlam action. We predicted a 31-24 Sooners win at home as they were favored by 7.5. And the actual score was 28-13. Oklahoma jumped on them really early and just cruised from there. 28-13 was the actual final score.
Yeah, that one was 21-0 Sooners quick.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of controlled it from there. Yeah,
I'll complain about that in a minute.
Getting back on their bedlam throne. I'm sure you will. Let's take a look then at our predictions, because those were our projections. These, though, are our predictions. Not exactly a banner week here on the program, fellas. Jed, we'll start with you. Big 12 Signal Caller of the Week, where you tell us which quarterback in the conference is going to throw for the most yards. We'll pull up the graphic now, and not so good.
Not so good. 2 goose eggs in a row for me, guys. I picked Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma to throw for the most against Oklahoma State. I was watching this game at Chili's on the TV at dinner. Dylan Gabriel had 224 yards in the first quarter. Okay. I thought, I'm in decent shape. He threw for 259. He had 35 yards because they jumped out to this 28-3 lead and said, nope, not throwing, just going to sit on it and run the final 45 minutes out. And I said, thanks for nothing. Meanwhile, Spencer Sanders, furiously trying to mount a comeback, threw for 381 in the same game for Oklahoma State. Max Duggan, big game in the TCU win, 327 for the Horned Frogs was number 2. We had a two-way tie at number 3, Will Howard against the Mountaineers, 294. Hunter Deckers for Iowa State at 294. And then Blake Shapen at 269. I came in at number 6, so I missed the cutoff. We only scored the top 5. So I came in at number 6, 259 yards for Dylan Gabriel, who had 224 passing yards in the first quarter. Come on, man.
Jed, life's tough. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm learning that.
I don't know what to tell you. It wasn't much better for Big O because he got back into his love affair with Deuce Vaughn this week. We'll pull up the graphic now, Owen. And, I mean, Deuce didn't even lead his own team in rushing. What's going on here?
Well, here's the deal. All right. It was a jinx. Okay.
It worked.
It worked.
Unfortunately, it sort of worked. But it didn't. You know what I mean? It worked for WVU, didn't work for me.
Yeah.
They did a
Your
good
jinx
job
worked
bottling
about
him
like
up.
my Hunter Decker's jinx a few weeks ago.
Yep, they
Yeah,
bottled him up. I mean, I should have went with Bijan Robinson. He absolutely went off with 243 yards
Smell that one coming.
at Kansas. That is why I took my pick. Yeah, you did tell me. Shut the up.
Uh-huh.
All right.
You could smell the mustard from here, Owen.
I can't smell the mustard. Damn it. So that is why I took Deuce again versus Kansas. Think he's going to do the same thing as Bijan did. But yeah, two other guys in the hundreds, right? Craig Williams versus Baylor, right? 112 yards and 108 for John Brooks. Texas guys. So Texas went off.
They did.
The only thing I'm good
yards
at is
rushing.
criticizing the upper deck here. That's the only thing I'm good at.
And that is another goose egg for Big O, and he might as well just stick to playing fullback.
We only got one left.
Gentlemen, my back still hurts from carrying this team.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody had to hit a double. Somebody had to hit a double through the gap here at least and get on base this week. We'll pull up the graphic now. I picked Iowa State as my defense of the week, and they allowed just 14 points, and that was only good enough for a third place tie. I mean, I tell you what, I thought the Big 12 didn't play any defense. That's what I've been told by everybody nationally. I picked the wrong defense in that game. Texas Tech winning 14-10 up there in Ames, only giving up 10 points to the Red Raiders. That was your best defensive performance of the week. Oklahoma just 13, and then the tie at 14 between Iowa State and Texas. So that gets me 3 points. That's a double in the gap there. I'm on base, but it's a little sour when you pick the wrong. You pick the right game, just the wrong defense.
Oh, you're telling me as Spencer Sanders threw for 381 yards?
You can feel my pain. You can feel my pain.
Yeah.
We'll have the full standings for you in our final preview episode. Obviously, the Oklahoma State preview that'll be coming here in a couple days. Earlier this week because of the Thanksgiving holiday, everything kind of condensed this week. Of course, we'll have the standings for you, and we'll give all of our projections and predictions for the final week of the regular season in college football before we get to championship week here in December. When we come back here, though, it's time for the game recap. The good, the bad, the pivotal moments. We'll break everything down that was the Mountaineers' loss at home on Senior Day to the Kansas State Wildcats. When we return, Wesley Uhler, Jed Drenning, Owen Schmitt, you are in the gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
For more West Virginia Mountaineer football content, be sure to follow us on Twitter @InTheGunPodcast.
Game day got you on the go? We get it. GoMart is here to keep you going all season long with stores throughout our home state. We're a proud West Virginia-owned company, and our friendly staff is committed to serving our communities. From fuel to freshly brewed coffee and snacks, a stop at GoMart to cover your game day needs is always a touchdown. Plus, GoMart Rewards members earn points with each purchase to redeem for discounts on gas and free items. So stop by, start saving, and stay on the go with GoMart.
It's time to get into the K-State recap here on this episode of ITG. 48-31, the Wildcats victorious at Mountaineer Field. We'll pull up the graphic now. Jed, how did that final score compare based off of our projection on the preview episode?
Well, unfortunately, not as favorably as last week. Our projection was a 31-24 K-State win. As we know, that wasn't quite the case. 48-31 was the final for the 15th ranked Kansas State Wildcats. Interesting to see where they'll land in the CFP rankings Tuesday as well.
Yep, and they can, I believe, right with a victory this weekend, they would clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game to take on TCU.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get into it. The good, the bad. Mr. Jedgar Allen Poe, our resident way with words. Where you want to begin here?
Oh, always the good. All right, let's go with the good. All things considered, this is a fellow I think who will end up in both categories. But Garrett Green making his first career start against one of the nastier defenses in the Big 12 and one of the nastier defenses really around college football in a lot of respects, I think performed pretty well. He made some big plays. It wasn't mistake free, but he made some big plays in the throw game. He was productive. Some splash plays, some difference making plays. Some of those things were coordinated well for him with him in mind, like the 71-yard touchdown to Sam. First of all, I'll say this, that interception he threw on third down in the first series, the only chance that play had was for him to, he was throwing to a covered receiver. The only chance that play had was for him to throw that target open. And instead of throwing that target open, Garrett actually threw it a little behind, and that's what resulted in the pick six. Okay. But the good news was shortly thereafter, his first touchdown on that slot fade to Sam James, it was a very similar route concept to what we converted the big 2nd and 15 early in the fourth quarter, the big catch by Sam James against Oklahoma the week prior. Very similar route concept. Now, on that one, also in the first quarter, Sam wasn't open. And Garrett did throw him open. When the ball left Garrett's hand, Sam wasn't open. And he led him perfectly. And then later in the first half, the 71-yard touchdown to Sam, that was a shot play. It was a called shot play with Sam in mind, saying, hey, get upfield on that skinny, part the Red Sea, and Garrett's going to see if he can lead you down the field a nice throw. And Garrett did. It wasn't one of those throws, those deep balls that Sam had to adjust to the ball to make it look accurate. It was a ball where Sam James actually had to accelerate at the last second, which helped him separate from the K-State secondary. It was a perfectly placed throw by Garrett. So a lot of good things from Garrett, a lot of good things from Sam James. I mean, Sam James is playing his best football as a Mountaineer right now. Unfortunately, it hasn't helped us a whole lot in the win column. But Sam had a great offseason. He had a great spring. He had a great camp, and that's translated into a great season for him. He's playing very good football for us. The West Virginia ground game, Garrett wasn't the piece that made it move this week as he was against Oklahoma. Instead, you had a combination of a couple other guys in there helping things out, including Jalen Anderson. I mean, it's really the first significant action that Jalen Anderson, the talent's always been there. He had a case of the drop season fumbleitis, which he's been in and out of the doghouse because of that from a practice standpoint, but he's always been a talented kid, an explosive kid. And you saw some of that with his 69 yards. Justin Johnson continued to produce 63 yards. So those two kind of paced it. And we talked about this in the last segment. Defensively, anytime you can limit Deuce Vaughn, one of the more dynamic, explosive, and dynamic players in all of college football, you've done something positive. We scored defensively. We didn't just force the turnover, but we actually scored off the turnover with the pick six. And then I'd say, after that first half with all those issues defensively, swelled up a bit defensively as the tone and flow of the game changed and played much better football in the second half. So those are what I took from the game as positives, guys.
Yeah, Sam James, I think certainly at the top of that list for me.
He went off.
Who knows what the future looks like for him? I do believe, right? He walked at senior day, right, Jed?
Yeah. And
we know that's not final.
No, it's not.
Dante walked last year and then walked again this year.
Walker, yeah.
But man, I would really like to have Sam James back.
Sam has just developed into something exceptional. But a couple names that I'd probably bring out on the defensive side that I didn't. Lee Koba played a pretty good football game. Of course, you're not going to bottle up Deuce Vaughn without that happening. We can't ignore the fact that K-State did find other weapons in the run game, but you had to take the air out of the room to neutralize Deuce Vaughn, and part of that was a combination of Lee Cobe on the second level and Marcus Floyd on the third level. Both of them played a pretty good football game, and the transition to Spear, from a tackling standpoint, guys, we now have a guy in Jasir Cox that has 25 tackles in 2 games at Spear. So he did a nice job of setting the edge often to the wide side of the field. So when moving from Will to Spear, he has the physicality of a Sam linebacker, but kind of the athleticism of a Will linebacker, and that served him pretty well. He's played pretty well. So that's the other 2 names I would add that I didn't in the good column on the defensive side. But you're right about Sam. Getting him back would be a coup. But of course, he'll put his paperwork in and see how things come back.
Sure. As he should, absolutely.
Playing great football right now.
Yeah. Hey, I guess technically, I mean, him and Bryce both could come back for one more year, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, both those guys walked. That's not final. We'll see how it all plays out. I know Bryce posted a pretty emotional tribute on Instagram that made it seem like he, was pretty sure that was his last game at Mountaineer Field, a place obviously where he grew up going to games. And always wanting to play. But again, these things are not final until they are, and we'll keep an eye on those processes as they play out here over the next couple months. I will say, though, if they decide to go to the pros and they're at the combine, hey, maybe I'll get to talk to them out there in Indy. Well, maybe, you know what? It's funny. I've had all this access at the combine in the past to all these guys. To the Will Greer, Yodney, Sills, Gary Jennings, David Longyear, last year with Letty. And I've never really had anything to do with that access because I'm just there doing my Steelers responsibilities. Yeah, but now that I'm thinking about this, we got some content for the podcast in February, depending on which one of these guys end up at the combine. I will say this too. Last year at the combine, if anybody from WVU football digital creative is listening, they stole my picture of Letty Brown last year.
Oh yeah.
Bunch of jerks. Yeah. WVU didn't send. You know what? I talked to Big Daddy about this. He would know the exact, but I think there was some people had left for other jobs and they had just hired some people. So WVU actually didn't send anyone to cover Letty at the combine last year. And when he was at the podium, I took a picture. I snapped it. I tagged WVU football in it. They posted it all over the place and didn't give me any credit.
Wow.
Big jerks. I mean, I could at least gotten a follow back on Twitter or something. So that's the good. Let's get into some of the negative here, Jed. What you got?
Do you have anything to add on the good, Owen?
It was cool to see the youngster get some decent reps and some I mean, even though his reps were limited, I mean, 7 carries there on the totes, but he took full advantage of them, obviously. And if we could have just played the same way we played in the second half defensively, unfortunately we didn't, but it is what it is. We'll go to the bad, sir.
Yeah, jump into the bad. Well, we talked about Garrett. Again, you don't expect an impeccable effort for the time capsule your first time out against a defense of that magnitude. K-State is a really solid, well-coached defensive football team. And to be honest with you, in some respects, we were moving the football on them the way few have. Maybe Texas, at points Oklahoma, but we moved the ball well on them. But the turnovers were hurtful, and again, that first turnover was one that Garrett. The only chance that play had was to throw a perfect football where you lead him into space, and it probably would have been tough to complete it, but at least it would have been away from the defender, and certainly wouldn't have ended in a pick six. So. That was one thing, but I think that's kind of guys that's acclimating to the speed of the game type learning opportunities as a quarterback. That's what I would say, Owen, is, that's one of those that I always say that sometimes you let go of a football and you wish there was a string tied to the end of it, so you could yank it back because, long before anybody in the stands or even the secondary does, this isn't going to end well. And I bet Garrett felt that way about that one. And the second,
Jed, I mean, that was part of our keys to success, right?
Yeah, that's right. Turnover battle. Yeah, absolutely. And the second pick, again, it's a throw you can't make, but I also had to tip my cap to Brent's because that kid, he's a 6'4" corner. He plays like a 6'4" corner. He is impressive up close and personal, guys. I mean, he's long. I think he's going to have NFL scouts salivating. This is a guy who's going to go on to some big things at the next level, I think. His build is tough to overcome. And he used every bit of that 6'4" frame for that second pick, but you can't turn the football over against K-State, just like you said, when we preached it all week. They really make you pay for it. And they had 18 turnovers in 10 games coming in. That means they average 1.8 takeaways a game. So the way you approach that, okay, if you only give it up one time, that's winning football because that's fewer than they normally take it away. But when you give up two, that's more than what you're gonna put yourself in a bad spot. And the other thing I would say is third down performances on both sides of the line of scrimmage for West Virginia. That really hurt us offensively. And we had the same conversation a couple weeks ago at Iowa State. Something that's been a strength of us for the better part of the season wasn't a strength of ours, certainly on Saturday. We were 2 for 10 on third down. And this isn't a Kansas State team for all their strengths, okay? That wasn't a tremendous strength of theirs. They're mortal when it came to third down defense, but they got us off schedule just enough to force us into a 2 for 10 showing. And then defensively, I'll start with this, guys. It was 21-13 before Kansas State faced a third down. And I can't imagine you're going to a whole lot of football games in which you've given. Now, part of that was the pick six, right, that Garrett threw. But it's going to be tough to win football games when the other team has 21 on the board and they haven't faced a third down yet, right? So first, you got to get them into those third down situations. And the second, you got to get ahead of, knock them behind schedule so you can win some of them. And that didn't really happen for us. They were 9 of 14 on third down once we finally did start forcing some third down situations. And they kind of just had their way with us. And another portion of the bad, obviously, you got to talk about special teams. Special teams let us down in a lot of ways. First, from an adverse starting position defensively. I mean, I was ready to joke on the broadcast at one point. Maybe we should shank one out of bounds to improve our starting point defensively, because at the time we were averaging a starting point for Kansas State at the 39-yard line. I said, well, you kick it out of bounds, at least it's the 35. Well, I was joking, but guess what happened? We kicked it out of bounds. So that was kind of the tenor of the day. They had great field position all day and won that hidden yardage battle. And then, of course, for a unit that has been like a well-oiled machine all season, the PAT field goal unit certainly wasn't one on Saturday. We had the 3 misses, 2 on extra points and 1 on the field goal. The field goal was an errant snap. I mean, it was all we could do to get into the holding position. But that first missed PAT, it followed the foul. It followed the infraction of delay game. That didn't help. You can't let that happen and knock you out of sorts. First of all, you shouldn't let it happen. Second of all, Casey Legg will be the first to tell you that if it does happen, he should still knock it through. The only thing I could tell guys, it wasn't a true shank, but when you studied on the tape, they may have impacted that kick from a pressure standpoint. They had a nice rush coming off the right edge, Owen, and they kind of ran the hump very quickly past Sean Martin and eased off on the left edge, and through the force of what they were trying to do from a block standpoint, right off that right edge. And it was almost to the point it looked like it might get blocked, and he was laying out and stretching out to do it. And I was thinking Casey almost had to see that, okay, coming right as he had his head down to kick that football. I can't answer that question for him, but maybe that's what impacted that kick, though it shouldn't have. And that's why he shanked it to the left. And then finally, what I'd close with on the bad, and you guys feel free to add, pile on, the big plays. I mean, they had 4 plays of 33 plus yards. So it's tough to make a living when that's going on, especially in a game. Here's what made it so frustrating. Maybe you can make the argument is, well, look, when you're kind of selling out so many resources to curtail a performance by Deuce Vaughn, well, you can't cover everything, right? So you're going to have some holes elsewhere, and they certainly made the most of those holes elsewhere with those big plays out of those other kids. Whether it was Malik Knowles, whether it was Giddens, whoever it might be, they have other weapons. And they were smart enough to utilize those other weapons and make some big plays as we were kind of holding Deuce in check.
Yeah, big plays, got to eliminate them. Marty Morningwig was huge. That's his thing. That's what he emphasized all the time. But kind of been, I will say one more bad is Wes. My bad, dog.
It's all good.
I didn't show up. and I didn't bring the Mountaineer magic. I apologize.
Big O, at least our undefeated record will be preserved for another year. We
Hey,
can talk about it.
It almost seems that is the special sauce.
It's the special sauce. You can't listen. We got to take this. We got to take this thing on the road to State College next year.
See you in Happy Valley, brother. We better
see you in Happy Valley. See you in Happy Valley Labor Day weekend. Everybody, get it on your calendar. Don't get married Labor Day weekend. I'm not going to be there. All right, I'm going to be in State College, Pennsylvania.
How about don't get married during the fall? You know,
exactly.
Who wants to go first?
Can hold on the bad real quick? Can I go?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, can I go selfish, a global selfish one for you here?
Let's hear it.
I'm 31 years. I'm going to be 32 here in just a couple months.
I know
I'm
where
32
you're going
before long.
I got you.
First time in my life that WVU is going to have back-to-back losing seasons in football. It's been 43 years. It's been since the Signetti years when WVU rattled off 4 straight losing seasons to end the 70s before Don Nehlen came in 1980. Selfishly, first time in my life, first time in 43 years, the Mountaineers are about to have back-to-back losing seasons. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
I thought you were going with your coat.
Oh, well, the coat didn't bring the magic. Yeah, it did not. But at least I was. Oh, you know what? I have to go back and look.
Check that out. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'll have to. You know what? I'm gonna research. I'm putting that on the notes.
Started with a big one, the 09 Pitt win.
It did.
Yeah.
Now there were also some, because in 2015 and 16, I lived in Ohio because I was working for the hockey team and I was traveling all the time.
Okay.
So I would only get to go one home game a year those years. And then when I was living in Philly in 17 and 18, I only went to one home. So there was a stretch there of 4 or 5 years where I don't think I went to any of the final games, but I'll have to go back and look at it.
I'd like to see that. Teaser alert. The coat and the 09 Pitt game will be mentioned in the next episode as we discuss Thanksgiving memories, but Thanksgiving weekend memories. But anyway,
I love it.
Moving ahead. Yeah.
I love it. Pivotal moments.
Who wants to go? I mean, I got one. It's kind of a weird one, but I'd like to hear your guys.
Okay. You want me to go, Big O?
I'm just going to say the pivotal moment for me was the entire first half.
I thought you were going to say when you couldn't make it to Morgantown, but
what a bunch of shambles, man. Just rough start. Hard to start a game like that. You know what I mean? Giving up that many points in the first quarter. Obviously we did battle and try to come up with it, but
and did you know that was the highest scoring first quarter in the history of West Virginia football?
Well, I can only imagine, because that's generally what the end score is.
47 points. Yeah. It broke a record. We found this out in the post game from Montoro's notes in the late 50s against Richmond. 44 points. Believe it or not. Yeah, 47 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, the old historian busting out the knowledge for us.
We got Wes.
Busting out the knowledge for us. There's a lot that we could go with here. I'm interested to see what Jed cooks up. But while I've stated here before on the show that I'm an eternal pessimist, that I don't believe we're going to beat Oklahoma until that kick goes through. I don't believe we're going to beat Baylor until the final seconds go off the clock. Right? I don't believe we're going to beat Virginia Tech until the game's over, even though we're winning by 23 points. I also, the other side of that, though, is in the buildup, I'll always convince myself that there's still a way back in it when the Mountaineers are losing, right? So that's the other side. That's my glass half empty side. Is if we're getting steamrolled in the first half, I'll convince myself, you know what, there's a way back, though. This isn't over just yet. That's kind of the duality of the fan that I am, I guess.
That makes sense.
I'm down 16 at half. I'm down. I'm playing again. It's a one-on-one game out there. It's Wesley Uhler versus Kansas State University. We're down 16 at half, right? And like Owen said, you did so much wrong in that. You got some big plays too, and your defense got the pick 6 and some of those things.
Yeah.
But you're down 16 at half in a game where it felt like, okay, we could easily be down 21, 24, 28 right now with some of the mistakes that we've made. But at the same time, this could also be like a 10-point game. This could be a 13-point game. You're getting the ball back at halftime too, which was key in this. And I'm thinking, all right, if you come out here In the second half, you score. Maybe you go for the 2-point conversion, right? Because you're down 16, you make it an 8-point game. All of a sudden, it's a 1-possession game. Anything can happen. My pivotal moment is you come out at halftime, you take 9 minutes off the clock, and you end up with 0 points. And then I said, all right, well, game's over. That's it. That's when I knew that we were done right there. So brought to you by our friends at High Street Prints. My pivotal moment was that drive to open the second half. You needed points, and you needed them quickly, and you took 9 minutes off the clock, and you got no points. That, to me, was when the game was over. That's my pivotal moment.
Wes, you're right. I made the point in the post-game show. It almost felt like we were robbing the bank for the bank robber. We were doing K-State's job for them. I mean, they wanted nothing more than to take the air out of that clock. Okay. Yep. And that was hurtful in so many different ways because we chewed so much meaningful time off that clock, and K-State loved every second of it with the way it ended. What I'm going to go with is the first half had a strange flow to it. And you very much felt like, okay, this isn't the type of game we can win if it stays like this. At some point, we have to grab the reins on this game and completely change the flow of this football game, because this is the flow that favors them. Okay. Now, I don't know when that's going to happen, but we're not built to beat these playmakers in a shootout. I mean, they've shown this year that they can win those types of games. Even though they're also good at shrinking the game and winning defensive battles. But the truth of the matter is, it just had a weird vibe to it with this. They score, we score, they score, we score. They go up 14-0, we score, twice to come back. You wanted to change the flow, but you felt like, okay, but we better hang on for dear life until we do change the flow. You better not blink, because if you blink, next thing you know, those reins are slipping right out of your hands. And there goes that stallion off into the field. This thing's over. Well, it was 14-7. At 14-0, it kind of felt like, oh boy, you better do something and do it now. We answer with the score. Garrett does a nice job taking him downfield. Sam, great catch, touchdown. Nice balanced drive, right? So they get the ball back. Now, can the defense get a stop? It's 14-7. Okay. Surely you can't hope for a turnover. This is K-State. They never turn the ball over, right? They never turn it over. So the best you can hope for is a stop. Well, not only did we get a turnover, we forced this pick. I mean, great coverage by the defense. When you watched Will Howard, he looked play side to the wide side of the field, Owen. Didn't like what he saw. It was very congested. Came late to the backside. And when he did, he tried to find his tight end. And instead of finding his tight end, Malachi Ruffin found him. And Ruffin picks the football off. And, 37,000 or whatever it might have been at the stadium. That was the official tally. Even if it was fewer, it was allowed 30-some thousand. And he goes marching off for a touchdown. So here we forced a turnover against the turnover-free, the team that never turns it over. And we cashed it directly in. And that's how we were on the doorstep of tying the game. So we hadn't blinked. We still had a hold of the reins. And the horse wasn't getting away, right? Guys, when we missed that PAT, that sideline dropped flat as a pancake. I mean, all that energy. Oh, and you know what it's like. I mean, that sideline was just pumped full of life. I mean, we were just completely invigorated and lifted and going nuts. Every person on that sideline with that pick six. And as soon as we missed that PAT, it just down it comes. And you're like, oh, it almost feels like we didn't score. So it just completely stole all the momentum. Yeah. And the next thing you know, they take the ball back. They easily march down 21-13. It was a situation that it felt like that was when we blinked.
Yeah.
And again, you very much had the sense that you better hang on to these guys. We're not going to win this style of game. But nobody's saying it'll be this style of game for 4 quarters. But you better not let them separate while it is this style of game.
Yeah.
Okay. So hang on tight and keep it close. And then by the time we change the style, maybe in the second half, we can grind this thing out.
Yeah.
Well, we blinked. We lost our mo. Next thing you know, we did fall behind the 8 ball. They did separate. And as Wes talked about going in at the half, it was still within striking distance. But by the time it turned to the type of game that more favored us in the second half, they'd already separated too much. And my pivotal moment was the missed PAT by a guy who hadn't missed a single kick all year.
Yeah.
All year.
That was the first, which followed a penalty again, an
It's
unnecessary
crazy.
penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just one of those things where he hasn't missed a single kick of any type all year, field goal or PAT, and that was the first one he missed. And Casey has had an exceptional, special year, and that was the first one we missed. And it just, that sideline, I'm telling you, it just, those types of things have a way, you know.
The man.
Yeah,
the momentum.
And
Jed, you know,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to bring up the West game for a minute because it kind of had a feel where in the first half of the game, you know, we go in the locker room, it's 28-6. I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, we just took an absolute shellacking. But we come out third quarter, we score real quick, and I'm thinking, okay, we get a stop here.
Yeah,
we got something going on. Well, they shoved it down our throat, and then on the pursuing kickoff return, we fumbled the football, and I was like, this one's not going good. But it's the momentum, right? We had a chance for a big stop in the beginning of the game. I mean, and like you said, we talked about momentum all year. Casey was the guy who was perfect all year.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're thinking this guy just doesn't miss. And then when something like that happens, like you said, you just feel that, and like you said, you saw it firsthand when the air goes out of the sails, man. It's ugly. It's ugly.
I mean, it's one of these big plays that only happen. A pick six only happens so often, right? To really, you know, shoot you full of momentum, and it just felt like that was deflating, you know. Yeah. And 3 plays later, they scored on a big run by Giddens, and now they're up by 8, and you're chasing points. And again, we blinked in a half of football that felt like the margin for error was very slim and very finite. And you kind of felt like, okay, we can trade blows, and we showed, you know. Look how many points we ended up scoring in that first half, guys. I mean, we showed that we had some pop to us offensively, but you know, we blinked first. And that kind of just gave them just enough of a momentum advantage, Owen, that, you know, we couldn't catch up anymore.
Jed, you mentioned how it was deflating on the sideline. It was the same thing in the stands, man. Like,
yeah,
you mentioned it, the 30-some thousand that were there. It's always that, you know, we've discussed this before, like the Baylor game on a Thursday night, you know, coming off the Texas beatdown, like the Oklahoma game last week in the piss and rain. Those lower attended games, the people who were there really want to be there. They're engaged. They're into it. They're not just there because it's a fun day out with the family.
Students are out of town. Yeah.
Students are out of town. It's in those crowds. We've talked about this before on the podcast. They're always engaged crowds because you're not there just for a fun afternoon out to watch some football in the, you know, the 20-degree weather with a 4-6 team. Yeah. You're there because you're engaged and because you care. Yeah. And after that pick six, it was like, all right, here we go. You're down 14-0 and the place is dead. And then all of a sudden it's back alive and you miss that. And it was the same kind of deflating feeling where, like, man, the one thing we've been able to count on all year is Casey's leg. See what I did there? And you miss in a moment like that. And it's tough. It is. It's demoralizing. It's deflating. It's all those different adjectives that we could sit here and regurgitate for another few minutes. But those,
and along with Casey, guys, goes the operationally, the snap, the hold. I mean, everything about it.
Yeah.
Everything about it.
Not all those misses were on Casey, as you've laid out.
Yeah. I mean, even when we didn't hit it well, we hit it well enough to count for points and go through. Right. I mean, everything was always up to par operationally from a kicking standpoint. And that's, again, it followed the penalty. And you kind of get the sense that, was the penalty just enough to knock us out of sorts, right? In other words, is there a certain, you know, circadian rhythm that maybe kickers have that they're accustomed to? Right after a touchdown, here's where I run. I don't know about kickers, you know, I can't tell you. They're used to so many seconds after a touchdown running right out. And if you disrupt that rhythm, well, now I got to wait a few extra seconds because there's a penalty, and who knows with kickers, right? But whatever it might have been, it didn't work out for us, and it felt like we blinked and all that mo was lost. Our mojo was gone.
Well, that's a great call by you. It certainly is. We're going to take our last break here. Those are our good, bad, and pivotal moments. We'll be back in just a moment to wrap up the show. You are in the gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Mountaineer Nation, have you visited us online? For great gifts and gear and our entire episode playlist, check out itgfootball.com.
Back in the gun here. That's it for episode 28, our Kansas State recap episode. We will have...
We're going to have an episode called Just the Breaks.
Just the breaks?
We'll actually tape what we discussed during the breaks, and that's why we're going back. Sorry to interrupt.
That could be our week content.
Yeah.
It is true what they say. It is true what they say in this business, that quite often the best conversations are had off air. Thanks to our friends at Bet Online once again for presenting this episode. We will obviously have our final preview episode of the season for you. We'll do all things Okie State conversation later on in the week. A reminder before we go, Black Friday BOGO sale, itgfootball.com, our shop there on Black Friday. We're going to have a BOGO sale for you. So make sure you can treat yourself and treat one of your loved ones there and kind of kill two birds with one stone as you kickstart your holiday shopping. itgfootball.com. Of course, make sure you're following along on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. In the Gun Podcast is where you can find us there. And as always, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. As we're, gentlemen, we're coming down the stretch here of our first season of doing this thing together.
Here we go.
It's been one of the lone bright spots.
That's right.
It's been real. It's been fun, but it ain't been that fun. It's been real. Yeah.
Oh, so take care, everybody. We'll talk to you later this week. We'll have the full Okie State preview. We'll tell some tales of Thanksgiving lore. Owen and Jed share some stories. I'll share some stories, as we'll have some Thanksgiving fun on the Okie State preview episode as well too. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you again later this week. For Jed Drenning and Owen Schmitt, I'm Wesley Uhler. You've been in the gun.